Welcome to the Heartbreak Chronicles, where every story is a raw reflection of life. Hit that subscribe button to stay tuned, give us a like to show your support, and share this episode with your friends. Don't forget to leave a comment and let us know what you think. Now, let's dive into today's story. My name is Ryan. I'm 33 years old and I'm a senior program manager at a large tech company in Silicon Valley. The walls of my office are covered with awards and certificates that bear witness to my accomplishments over the past 10 years in the tech industry. I always thought my life was perfect, a successful career and a happy family. My wife Alice and I have been married for 7 years and have a lovely 5-year-old daughter Lily. Alice is a creative director of a well-known advertising agency, and we are an enviable model couple in the eyes of outsiders. We live in a beautiful bi-level house in Palo Alto, and every weekend we take Lily to a nearby park for a picnic or drive to the beach for a vacation. Our social media accounts are filled with happy family photos, earning countless likes and envious comments. However, all this goodness began to disintegrate on an ordinary evening. That day, I stood in my kitchen, looking out the window at the sunset, and inexplicably felt a heaviness in my heart. In recent months, Alice has become increasingly strange. One might even say snarky. Her words were full of cynicism, and the gentleness and caring that had once characterized her seemed to have disappeared. Whenever I try to communicate with her, she always makes excuses to leave and won't say anything more to me. We need to talk. I finally spoke up after a quiet dinner. What's there to talk about? Alice didn't look up, still staring at her cell phone screen, impatience in her tone. I took a deep breath and continued. I think you've been acting a little strange lately, and there seems to be some problems between us. Alice sneered as if she had heard some ridiculous joke. Problem? Ryan, you're too sensitive. She closed her phone and looked up at me, her gaze cold and sharp. Either you're stressed out from work, or you have a ghost in your heart? Her words pierced my heart like needles, but I forced myself to hold back my inner turmoil and didn't immediately retort. This was not the first time she had such an attitude, and this indifference gradually made me begin to wonder. Had Alice, the woman who had walked alongside me and shared my life, ceased to love me, or even had another man? Seeds of suspicion took root in my mind, and I began to pay more attention to Alice's every move. I noticed that she often worked late and always had all kinds of social engagements and parties. Every time I inquired, she would impatiently reply, "It's just for work. You don't understand?" One night, I had a date with some friends. I rarely attend these social events these days, but in order to escape the depressing atmosphere at home, I decided to go out for a break. We gathered at a bar around 10 p.m. for drinks, conversation, and jokes. Just as I was about to go to the bar to get a drink in between, I heard a familiar name, Alice. Hey, I heard Alice has been getting close to that tech director lately. A voice came from not far away. Yeah. They go to the Code bar to meet every week. It seems pretty uncomplicated. Another voice picked up. My whole body froze and my mind went blank. Technical director? The Code bar? Are they talking about my wife and Jack? Jack is the head of our company's AI program, and while we don't know each other very well, we're kind of nodding acquaintances. Could Alice really be related to him? I couldn't believe what I was hearing, and my whole body felt like it was on ice, with uncontrollable anger and upset welling up inside me. Why Jack? He's my colleague. The feeling of betrayal weighs me down, and I can't stay in the bar any longer, leaving in a hurry, my mind a mess. When I got home, I tried to calm down, but anger and doubt still rolled through me. Alice had long since gone to bed, and the house was silent. Through the dim light of the window, I looked at her sleeping face, and everything seemed as peaceful as ever. However, the calmness of the moment was so false. Over the next few days, I became restless. Every time Alice goes out, I keep a quiet eye on her. Although she remained aloof, I found no conclusive evidence. I tried checking her cell phone and email and found nothing. She seems to have completely erased all traces of it. Eventually, during an argument, I couldn't take her attitude anymore and my anger exploded in a flash. Are you hiding something from me? I questioned. Alice sneered at me with disdain in her eyes. What the hell are you talking about, Ryan? You're being paranoid. She slammed the door and left me standing alone in the living room, the anger and suspicion inside me almost consuming me. There was no hard evidence, but that voice in my mind kept reminding me that she had betrayed me. I have to know the truth. I kept an eye on the password she used to unlock her phone, and finally one time when she was typing in her phone's password, I saw it, and I hurriedly recorded the password into my phone's memo. That night, I made a decision. While Alice was asleep, I quietly picked up her phone and unlocked it using the password I had recorded earlier. I secretly installed a location tracking software so I could monitor her whereabouts at all times to make sure she was actually meeting Jack behind my back. The next day, I went to work while checking her cell phone whereabouts frequently. I knew it was wrong to do so, but I could no longer control my doubts and insecurities. I need to know the truth, no matter how heartbreaking that truth is. Sure enough, her whereabouts began to give me pause. I found out that Alice frequented the Code bar on weekdays, which is where Jack frequented. I was becoming more and more convinced that my suspicions were not idle. One noon, Alice was busy preparing lunch in the kitchen while her cell phone was casually placed on the coffee table in the living room. My eyes subconsciously glanced to my cell phone when it suddenly rang and the display lit up. At that moment, my heart sank. It's an opportunity. I quickly walked over to the coffee table and picked up my cell phone, my fingers trembling slightly. For years, I had never checked her private messages, but now I couldn't stand the uncertainty any longer. I took a deep breath and entered the password I had accidentally recorded for my cell phone earlier in the day, unlocking the screen with no problem. A new text message popped up on her phone's messaging screen from her BFF, Emily. It was simple, but like a sharp blade to my heart. "Congratulations to you and Jack. It's finally easier." My breath almost stopped when I saw that. This understated tone reveals an intimacy that I can't ignore. I quickly went through the previous conversations, trying to find more clues. Soon after, I saw another detail that gave me chills. Alice mentioned being pregnant. This instantly ignited the anger and fear within me. She was pregnant, yet she never mentioned it to me. We used birth control for years and never talked about having children. So, who was the father of this child? My thoughts began to race. Has Alice betrayed me? If the baby she was pregnant with was Jack's, then what had I been living for? Everything seemed to collapse in an instant, my hand gripping the phone tightly, my hand filled with cold sweat. I forced myself to calm down and quickly exited the texting screen, putting my phone back down. That night, I lay in bed, my eyes fixed on the ceiling, my mind reeling with possibilities. Alice's recent indifference to me, her evasiveness, and her secret whereabouts. These are all pointing to a terrible truth. She may be betraying me, and that child is probably not mine. My thoughts go back to when we were first married. Alice got pregnant with Lily shortly after we were married, and we were very happy at the time. But I remember her doctor mentioning that she had had some fertility issues, especially erratic hormone levels. We had discussed temporary contraception to ensure a smooth pregnancy so that her body could get back to normal. However, Alice suddenly became pregnant, and at the time we thought it was a gift from God. But now it's all causing me to have deeper doubts. I'm beginning to suspect that not only the child she is now pregnant with, but even Lily may not be my biological daughter. The fear in my heart grew stronger as I tried to remember all the details of my past. I can't ignore the possibility. The next morning, I drove Lily to school. She got into the car and, as always, put on her headphones and immersed herself in her world. I gripped the steering wheel, but only one thought ran through my mind. I needed proof. After dropping her off at school, I took a break from tying her shoes and pretended to absently remove a few fallen hairs from her shoulders. In that moment, I felt like a criminal, but it was the only way. She didn't notice anything and easily said goodbye to me before running into the school. After getting a sample of her hair, I immediately contacted my college friend Mark. He works in a lab at Stanford University and is a genetics expert. I told him all my suspicions and asked him to do a DNA test for me. Mark was a little surprised but didn't ask much and agreed to my request. The next few days were filled with endless waiting. Whenever I tried to concentrate on my work, the content of that text message from Alice and her whereabouts always came to mind. Every now and then I checked her location logs, monitoring her every move, the anger and angst inside becoming more and more uncontrollable as time went on. I began to realize that no matter what the outcome, my life would never go back to the way it was. As much as my heart longed for Lily to be my daughter and for everything to be just a misunderstanding, I couldn't continue to lie to myself. If it turns out that Lily is not my daughter, my world will come crashing down and my marriage to Alice will come to an end. During this time, Alice seemed to notice my coldness, but she didn't show much surprise. She still went on with her life as usual, continuing her work and traveling every day, while I was like a shadow, silently observing everything she did. I couldn't face her again, didn't dare question her directly, and couldn't stop the suspicion within myself. Finally, one dreary afternoon, I got a call from Mark. He told me that the test results were in. My fingers clenched around the phone, my breathing heavy, my mind filled with fear and anticipation. Ryan, he was silent on the other end of the line for a moment, his voice low and serious. I'm sorry to tell you that Lily's DNA doesn't match yours. In that moment, the world seemed to stop. It was as if I had been struck by something heavy, and my entire body fell into numbness. Even though my mind had already predicted this outcome, I still felt bone-chilling pain when the facts were laid out before me. My daughter, Lily, who I have considered the love of my life for 5 years, is not my biological daughter. I hung up and slumped in my chair. Alice's betrayal was a foregone conclusion, and the life I had been living, our family, was nothing more than a carefully woven lie. From the moment I learned that Lily was not my biological daughter, my world completely fell apart. Alice and Jack's betrayal has left me incredibly angry and bitter. It was not only a betrayal of the marriage, but also a violation of my dignity as a father and a man. Anger built up in my chest until I decided that I couldn't let them go on like this without cost. I'm going to make them pay. Make them lose everything they hold most dear. My plan for revenge is not just to vent my anger, but to completely destroy their lives and make them experience the same pain I did. Jack is the head of our company's AI program, a position that is critical to him and one that I know he is proud of. I decided to start with his career, not by publicizing our personal feud outright, but by weakening his position in the company in a more subtle way. I reached out to a former colleague of ours, Tom, who had just jumped ship to a startup that was partnered with our company and had a direct line to the head of the tech department. Tom wasn't aware of my marital status, only that I had some contacts and resources in the industry. I skillfully conveyed my doubts about Jack's personal feelings through several meetings with him. You know Jack, right? I asked, pretending to be careless. He's really skilled, but lately I've heard that he's been having some trouble in his personal life, and he's not too emotionally stable, which might affect the progress of the project. I didn't elaborate on exactly what happened, but left it up to Tom to discover for himself. His position in his new company is not yet secure, so he will instinctively be wary of this information. A few weeks later, I learned from another friend that Jack's situation at the company had become delicate. His supervisors begin to have doubts about his job performance, and Jack is left out of several important meetings. Although Jack was not fired outright, his position was never again as secure as it had been before. He inadvertently got caught up in the company's workplace struggles, and I was just the slightest nudge to start him on the road to failure. Alice is a creative director at an advertising agency and has always been immensely proud of her professional accomplishments. Her work is not only a source of pride, but also part of her identity. I knew that she had just recently received a project from an important client, and if it went wrong, her career would be hit hard. I started spreading rumors about her messy private life through friends and partners in the industry. In the advertising industry, image and credibility are crucial, and if a client feels that her personal life may interfere with her work, they will quickly withdraw their cooperation. I skillfully passed this information on to Alice's client through a couple of friends, while suggesting that her recent performance may have been affected by marital problems. Several important clients began to have doubts about her performance and even canceled some contracts that were about to be signed. Eventually, Alice's company had to make the decision to take her on a temporary leave of absence to allow her to get in shape. Not only did this cost her an important professional position, but it also greatly damaged her reputation both inside and outside the company. After destroying their careers, my next goal was to publicize their scandals. I had no direct proof of their affair in my hands, but but I had other means of making the secret less painful for me alone. I didn't ruin them by publicizing the photos or outright exposing them. I know that this approach is too aggressive and may instead make them fight back. I chose a more subtle approach. I hinted at their relationship to their friends and coworkers by remaining anonymous. At a company party, I purposely raised my voice and said, "Have you guys heard that Alice and Jack have been getting close lately? Are they really just friends? If there's anything wrong, please do let me know." As soon as the words came out of his mouth, the people around him began to whisper. Although they hadn't noticed anything strange before, the vague hint was enough to trigger their suspicions. Rumors spread quickly in social circles, especially among our mutual friends. Everyone starts talking about Jack and Alice, and while there's no definitive proof, the rumors are enough to ruin their relationship. My plan had moved forward step by step, and Alice and Jack's lives were gradually descending into chaos and hardship. Even though I had achieved revenge, the trauma and anger inside did not lessen. As if all of this wasn't enough, my heart still felt empty, as if I needed to see them crumble more completely. Jack loses the technical director position he was so proud of, and is frustrated by the indifference and alienation of his former workmates and friends. He tried to approach other companies in the industry in an attempt to regain his position, but all attempts failed. Jack finally realizes that his reputation is irreparable and he has lost, not just his job, but his self-respect as a man and a professional. Every day, Jack and Alice's arguments become more and more heated. What were once those secretive dates and passionate interactions are now nothing more than mutual accusations and resentment. Frustration at work, financial pressures, and alienation from their social circle are destroying their relationship a little bit. "I should have known you would ruin my life," Jack yelled angrily at Alice one night, the anger on his face uncontrollable. Alice was speechless. She couldn't refute Jack's accusations because she knew that all of this had started with their betrayal. With Jack's job loss and constant bickering, their relationship heads for an irreparable breakdown. They move from dependence on each other to complete estrangement and eventually become strangers. Alice begins to realize that Jack is not the salvation she fantasized about, but instead is another shackle to her deep misery. Meanwhile, the battle in the courtroom was already underway. I filed formal divorce proceedings with the court and submitted Lily's DNA test results. The DNA report proved that Lily was not my biological daughter, which became the key piece of evidence that gave me the upper hand in the divorce proceedings. In court, Alice's attorney tries to get her some benefit on property division, but all the defenses pale in the face of the hardcore DNA report. My attorney carefully prepared extensive evidence accusing Alice of hiding the affair for a long time and even cheating me out of raising Lily for years. The judge's decision was made quickly. I won most of the property, and Alice lost almost everything. The court not only ruled that she needed to pay a portion of the alimony, but that she was also liable for high legal fees. The privileged life she once enjoyed in her marriage has now come to naught in the eyes of the law. The moment the court announced the verdict, Alice's face instantly paled, as if her whole being had fallen into the abyss of despair. No longer able to rely on the financial support she once had, the blow of the law forced her to face reality. She had nothing left. With the court's decision in effect, Alice's life enters an unprecedented predicament. She lost the house she once owned and had to move out of the home she had shared with me for many years. In order to pay her legal fees and alimony, she had to sell many of her personal possessions, even items she had always held dear. Alice moves into a cramped rental apartment. Everyday life is filled with stress and pain, and she can't even afford to pay for Lily's living expenses and educational expenses. Alice tries to find a new job, but her career has been completely destroyed by a scandal in the advertising industry. Those once high-end clients are now shunning them, and no one wants to hire a disreputable creative director. Under these circumstances, Alice has to rely on odd jobs to eke out a living. Each day, she struggles under the weight of life, remembering the days that were filled with remorse and helplessness. Alice couldn't take it anymore. She has tried to salvage our relationship by calling me several times in hopes of getting my forgiveness or at least easing her financial woes. Her calls came again and again, but I hung up without hesitation. Her voice is just harsh noise to me now. I know that she has lost everything she ever had, and I am no longer willing to offer her any help." Jack eventually chose to leave. After a heated argument, he packed his bags and left the apartment they had shared for good. Having lost his job, his relationships, and all his friends, his life has been plunged into darkness. No one knows where he went or cares where he went. The once confident technical director is now nothing more than a failure in life. Alice, on the other hand, sinks deeper into loneliness and despair. She is alone, living in a cramped apartment, her past glories long gone. She can never go back to her old life, and the reality of her predicament is like a heavy chain that binds her to every choice. She remembers everything she once was, only to realize that all her hopes and futures have gone up in smoke because of her betrayal. She once had a loving husband, an intact family, and a glittering career. But now, all she has is a broken dream caused by her own hands. Even though my plan for revenge was complete, watching Alice and Jack's lives go to ruin, I didn't feel the satisfaction I expected. The anger and hatred that was once there is now dissipated in their destruction, but it doesn't make me feel any lighter. Revenge brings no real relief. Instead, it is accompanied by an endless emptiness. I've won everything and lost more. I lost the trust, love, and family I once had. And even though Alice and Jack have paid the price for their betrayal, the wounds in my heart remain unhealed. Sometimes, in the dead of night, I think of the past and the wonderful memories we used to share. But I know those times can never go back. I had to learn to accept it all and find my new direction in life. I had expected the thrill of victory to be accompanied by lasting relief. Alice and Jack paid the price they deserved. I destroyed their lives and made them suffer endless pain and despair for their betrayal. But as time went on, I realized that while the anger inside me had temporarily subsided, a deep sense of emptiness had taken its place. Revenge brings a brief moment of satisfaction, but it doesn't fill the cracks in the heart that were once torn open by the hurt. I don't regret what I've done. Alice and Jack betrayed me and trampled on my faith in family, marriage, and trust, and they deserved to pay for it. Revenge was my only option, and I couldn't forgive them for putting me in the depths of pain that easily. However, I began to realize that true relief lies not in the punishment of the betrayer, but in how to let go of that obsession with betrayal. I used to think that by destroying them completely, I could find peace again. But reality tells me that revenge is nothing more than a cycle of misery that keeps me wandering. The pain that was once there has now become an echo within. Whenever it's late at night, I still think about the past. Those happy days, those lost moments. Alice's smile, Lily's innocence, and even Jack's back became blurry and clear in my memory. However, now I am beginning to realize that only by learning to let go of these pasts can I truly step out of the shadows and embrace a new life. Not for forgiveness, but for my own freedom. Letting go doesn't mean I deny the legitimacy of my revenge. Those who betrayed me must suffer the consequences, but I no longer need to let hate control my future. I had accomplished my mission, and revenge had kept my dignity and given me back control over my life. Eventually, my life was on a new track. I still remember the pain of those betrayals, but I no longer let it be an obstacle to my forward progress. Revenge is an end, but also a new beginning. It made me realize that letting go of the past is not a sign of weakness. Quite the contrary, it is a courageous choice for the future. Those who had hurt me were far away from my life. I no longer cared about their endings or obsessed about whether or not they would continue to suffer. Revenge has taken away the punishment I needed, but the rest of the way is my journey alone. I began to understand that the true meaning of life is not in hatred and revenge, but in how to find my own light after the pain. The past can't be changed, but I can choose how to face the future. I won't forgive those who betrayed me, but I won't let their shadows shape my life anymore either. Eventually, I came out of that dark time with a new understanding and hope for life. My pain was not in vain. It made me stronger and taught me how to find peace after revenge. This is my rebirth and my deliverance. I can finally let go of the past and embrace the future. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a story to share about your own or someone else's experience, please feel free to contact me. Take care.